Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans podcast. It is at the dead of summer, which means only one thing, and it means God's greatest holiday is upon us. U.S. Independence Day.
USA, USA,
Yes,
USA.
yes. Hello, my less than patriotically dressed friends. I'm here in the color blue, the one of the American flag colors. The rest of you appear to be the starry void from which the stars came from.
Actually, I prepared for
Ah.
this, and I've been waiting for this.
Yes, Justin has his out there. Yeah,
My
all
deodorant's red,
American
white, and blue.
colors.
Hey, this is an American company, red, white, and blue. There
I
we
found
go.
this shirt
My-
at Wrigley Field during a Cubs game, which is the most American thing. It features American flags, baseballs, hot dogs. It is the single most patriotic thing to wear.
My
Yeah.
medication's red, white, and blue.
Go ahead and take your medication.
Yeah.
All right. So yes,
so
we're
are
talking.
you after a beating. Anyway, anyway, we are here, of course, to celebrate the holiday in which Abraham Lincoln rides a giant bald eagle into the center of a football stadium and and sings the national anthem.
To quote Nick Offerman's character from Parks and Rec,
Oh man.
No.
nothing happened before 1776. At least nothing important. Or actually, that's a bit of a paraphrase.
Yeah. So anyway, to bring us up for Independence Day here, Independence Day for the United States is celebrated on July 4th, and it commemorates the passage of the Declaration of Independence by the Continental Congress of the United States, all the way back in the year 1776.
That was a great year.
Yeah.
Great year.
Now
The
Congress
only year
had-
that matters.
Yep. Yeah. Now, Congress had voted in favor of independence 2 days earlier on July 2nd of 1776, but the final draft of the Declaration of Independence was not approved until the 4th of July, which means that July 4th became the date inscribed on the original copy of the Declaration of Independence because that was the day it was finally finished.
July 2nd doesn't have.
Yeah.
July 2nd doesn't have a nice ring to it, though. July 4th, though.
Additionally, this meant that July 4th became very popularized as a patriotic date because it became the date that was printed on what is known as the Dunlap broadsides, which were copies of the Declaration of Independence that were distributed almost like flyers throughout the 13 colonies so that everyone in every city or township could come and read or have read to them the words of the new nation as it was thusly formed.
Wait, so they had a bunch of copies made?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's called-
Nicolas
yeah.
Cage somewhere is like thriving.
Wait, so how do we know that the Declaration of Independence that we have is in the Smithsonian?
It's in the National Archives.
National Archives.
How do we know that's the actual one or it's not a copy?
Well-
I've been there. It is the actual one.
Yeah.
It does have the inscription on the back. Basically marking it as such.
There-
Sorry.
Oh, I didn't know
on the
that.
backside, there is writing on the backside.
There actually is an
Oh.
interesting story that came out a couple of years ago from Nashville. A woman purchased a portrait at a thrift shop or pawn shop, and in the back of the case of the painting, she removed the backing. She found an original copy of the Declaration of Independence.
Okay, you guys remember that? It's like the
Effectively.
Roman bust in Texas.
Gu-
Y'all-
on that broadside.
Y'all, if the world is missing artifacts and it's not in the British Museum, go check an American pawn shop.
Seriously, there are a lot of cases of really prominent finds.
Yeah,
There's probably
yeah.
a missing Picasso somewhere in Oklahoma.
The British put it in a glass box and tell everyone to screw off. We're staring at it. The Americans sell it for whiskey money and then leave it somewhere.
God.
Pretty much.
You gotta love imperialism.
So yeah, they
Anyway.
found a copy and she had it validated, and it was marketed as the find of the century because of how rare.
Oh, that is very
That is
fun.
great.
I did not get to hear about that. But the yes, so the Declaration of Independence itself was written by Thomas Jefferson in consultation with a committee appointed expressly for this purpose, made up of John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and William Livingston. And before we go any further, I just want to take a moment for us all to acknowledge how hard it is to get Thomas Jefferson and John Adams to agree on anything. These men did not like each other. They are the third and second presidents of the United States of America, respectively. Jefferson actively sabotaged Adams's entire presidency.
Yeah,
These
is it?
hated each other.
Yeah, that's right. Because back then, it was still the runner-up was the VP,
Yeah.
and Thomas Jefferson was part of the anti-federalist, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah. Thomas Jefferson was anti-federalist because John Adams was backed by George Washington and Alexander Hamilton, and Hamilton was one of the leading Federalists.
Hamilton was the lead Federalist. He wasn't one of. He was the lead. He's the one who penned the Federalist Papers.
No, but he wasn't. Yeah, but he wasn't necessarily the lead Federalist on account of the fact that he could never. He never could make, shall we say, high political office without other people's help because he was very politically untenable for certain reasons.
So is Roger Sherman William Sherman's ancestor?
I do not know that. All I know is that this was one of the people at the...
I do believe so. I believe there was a colonial connection there.
I'll say, you'd be surprised. Like, I always say, like, stuff like this is always really interesting to see how far back. Because we don't really have, like, lineages that we really follow closely. Even George Washington's lineage is, like, kind of more of, like, a fun fact rather than anything else. So, when you see a few last names this early on, you kind of want to ask that question, are they related?
So I'm looking around a little bit. I am finding evidence that yes, Roger Sherman may have been related to William Sherman. I'm not getting anything particularly clear on it, but it believes so via a man named Henry Sherman.
All right, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there is a lot of recurring names in this family tree that I am pulling up, including the very confusing fact that Roger Sherman, the founding father, his father was William Sherman. So there's a lot of recursive things on that as well.
Good old naming traditions.
English naming. We have 7 names and we will use them all.
But yeah, so it's interesting that you can pull a lot of lineages. If you look at the list of all the signatories, there are some really, really prominent names there. And of the prominent names, I mean, in total there were, 56 signatories from the 13 colonies.
Yep.
And then one of the most prominent ones, which everyone refers to, is John Hancock, because he wrote his name the biggest, but also he was the first signatory, and when you're the first, you set the pace.
Yeah,
the man wrote the biggest as he possibly could. Yeah. Imagine, like like everybody else who was trying to sign. There's like, God damn, there's just only a little bit of room left. Yeah. He's got like a really long last name, so he had to like scribble.
Yeah, he had a very fun and patriotic reasoning for that. He said that when they sent the copy to King George, he didn't want the king to need his reading glasses to know who had signed it.
That's where the American patriotism comes from. Like,
he really hated George III.
He's the one who sparked the American tradition of making sure you know where insert thing here comes from.
No, he's definitely started the bigger is better trend for sure.
Oh Jesus!
Anyway, it's funny you should bring up John Hancock, because John Hancock is in fact one of only 2 people to actually sign the Declaration of Independence on July 4th. When it was presented to the Continental Congress on July 4th, It was only signed by John Hancock and Charles Thompson, who signed as an approval of the final draft by the Continental Congress, as Hancock and Thompson were serving as both president and secretary of the Continental Congress, respectively. And so they were signing it as sort of like, yes, we have read this and we approve of the words here, and we'll gather everybody else up to sign it in time, as they had to kind of gather the other 54 signatories from the 13 colonies.
Assemble the team. Assemble the squad.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, these 13 colonies became the first 13 states of the USA, which now holds 50.
Well, and it also, I think, should be very much noted that to be an early signatory is a really big step, because at this point, what they're doing is actively treason against the king. And, you know, to have your name be one of two on there, a lot of people could have backed down and the whole thing could have fallen apart, but everyone needed to commit, and for those first two people, that was a really big sign. And again, going back, Hancock signing his name large really gave a lot of confidence into what they were trying to sell.
Yeah, and the other 54 men who signed it, they had a whole month to back out, as the Continental Congress does not sign the Declaration of Independence until August 2nd of 1770. So they had a whole nother month to sit there and say, wait, are we doing this?
Yeah, like, you guys sure? Are we still on?
Of course, it was kind of already said and done, as they had all already voted to create a Declaration of Independence, so everyone was kind of already had a foot in the boat.
I mean, because it's not like the Constitution where like that required a lot more debating, and this one was more of like what is the reason for this declaration, why and how, I guess. Because either way, this didn't exactly have to end in independence. This could have literally just ended in increased autonomy, more representation. But this was like this.
Yeah. Well,
this was basically just saying why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, if you read through the Declaration of Independence, it actively accuses George III of declaring war on the colonies in two forms. First, through the deployment and levying of armed troops against the 13 colonies, and the second by bribing the indigenous tribes on the borders of the 13 colonies to raid and kill civilians. It accuses King George III of hiring out Native American tribes to murder American colonists.
Oh no, American conspiracy theories go back farther than I thought.
Except, unfortunately,
oh my god,
it's not a conspiracy theory. That one was real. He did.
True, yeah.
The language behind it is incredibly outdated, but yes, the Native Americans on the borders of the 13 colonies were very eager for vengeance against the 13 colonies following the 7 Years' War, also known as the French and Indian War, where the members of the 13 colonies under the British flag had conquered a good deal of their territory. So it wasn't too much for the King of England to say, hey, I'll give that back if you murder them.
Not to mention, the ones that did side with the British still killed and took their lands.
Yeah.
Like, they allied with the British, and then the British went, that's a lovely parcel of land you have.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, wasn't it also that the colonists couldn't settle past a certain point?
Yeah.
So there was a line drawn on the map that basically meant that anything after this point is not property of anyone except for King George himself. And the American colonists are forbidden from going and settling there, which very much angered the American colonists because their colony charter says, for all 13 colonies, said that Pennsylvania extends from the shoreline on the eastern seaboard all the way to the coast of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, the line, I believe, was the Ohio River. I want to say it was the Ohio River, but it may have even been the Appalachians.
Oh, yeah, because I do remember back in high school. Those old maps they used to show where like Virginia just extended outward.
Yeah. All 13 colonies extended like the stripes on the American flag all the way out, presumably ad nauseum until you hit ocean.
And then it continued into Asia. It circled back
But
around.
like that was what the official charter stated, and now King George was seen as renouncing that charter by saying, "Hey, that land on your borders that I just seized, that's my personal property, and none of you filthy peasants can touch it." Even though you filthy peasants were the people who died for it.
I mean, like, I've heard of stories of, like, stuff being, like, proper, like, certain land being, like, specifically property of the king, but to say the rest of the continent's the king's.
Yeah.
The
reason he wanted to do that was because the king was looking for, the king doesn't really gain anything by giving these colonies, more land. But if he were to form new colonies and gift them as property to, say, his current generals, like a man who would become very famous in the American Revolutionary War, a General Cornwallis, that would benefit the King George quite nicely. Whereas honoring this agreement with people from halfway around the world, that doesn't personally benefit the court of King George. So the court of King George does not do this.
Also, I want to point out the fact that maps and knowledge of territory at this time was practically non-existent. I mean, the Spanish had conquered a lot of the Pacific seaboard, but we didn't know about a lot of the land in between. I mean, the French had barely gotten into the Great Lakes region by this time. So for the king to say all lands...
Yeah. Well, actually, by this time, the French had figured out the Mississippi exists.
Okay, so the Mississippi is the extent border.
Because the 7 Years' War is basically a battle over, like, British Columbia for a lot of this stuff. But, like, the French had figured out the Mississippi by about this time, and we knew that the river came down, and that was about it.
The good old mighty miss.
Yeah, the Spanish had figured out Texas and California were a thing, and the Russians would have just found Alaska.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, that's under Catherine.
The Russians are within a few decades of Alaska at this point.
Yeah, because they had their own expansion eastward, and then eventually Catherine gets to Alaska.
What a cursed alternate timeline that could have been.
Yeah, there's a lot of territory stuff. Anyway, back to Independence Day. The United States, or as they were the 13 colonies, they declare themselves, these United 13 colonies are states. They declare themselves states in the Declaration of Independence. They're, of course, declaring independence from Great Britain, which was a very big and dangerous thing to do because Great Britain was the preeminent military power of the day. In the 18th century, the British Army was the world's greatest army. It had not been defeated in battle in at least since Napoleon. And even then, they didn't really lose to Napoleon so much as suffered casualties.
The sun never sets over the British Empire.
They were basically the one European nation that was left unconquered and did not pay tribute to Napoleon, so they were feared.
Yeah, and the British...
It's not like Napoleon could get there.
Well, and it's also just kind of important to note that, yeah, they stood up to Napoleon, but at this point, the British Empire had deep roots all across the world, and their navy vastly outperformed even the second and third most powerful in the Spaniards. I mean, their military projection would have... It honestly was the basis for the United States, which is kind of ironic how, like, the inspiration, the artwork...
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I mean, during this early part of, obviously, like colonialism goes back to like, arguably to Christopher Columbus, but at this stage in colonialism, quite literally, those who ruled the seas had the greatest advantage of having colonial empires, and prior to Britain was Spain. And even then, the British took out the Spanish Armada in the 1500s.
Spain was that much. And we did put a cart before the horse a little bit with the Napoleon example, as the French Revolution is caused by the American Revolution. But just the fact that Napoleon, who was probably the greatest general of his era, can't even put a dent in the British Empire.
Okay.
No, because he was in North Africa at the time
So,
during
so
this, wasn't he?
question for you, and I want you
Yeah,
to
but
clarify
Napoleon
this
is
for
not
me.
emperor of France in 1776.
So Colum, I want you to clarify this for me. All right. So
Yeah.
we've already established that in this period of time, the British Army and Navy are the number one ultimate in the world.
Yeah. Yes.
So the United States, this backwoods, backwater conglomerate of 13 different pockets of people, managed to beat an army that even Napoleon's fully trained, fully professional staff of soldiers could not do.
Yeah.
Except
Like
at
a
the
few
Battle
years-
of Waterloo.
A few years later.
And we beat them with a man whose only military experience was building a fort at the bottom of a valley and losing a battle.
I would
Sent
like
you the entirety of George Washington's military career under the British Empire.
I'm not gonna lie. Great. It's for anyone who has like a mild interest in American Revolution, it is much more wild than you really think it is, especially when you introduce Lafayette and some of the Prussian who came over to help standardize the American military. Because by God, Lafayette and George Washington is the first pre-colonial ship.
Listen. Here's the thing. Lafayette and the French are a big reason why the French Revolution happens, because all these French soldiers come over to train, what are effectively peasants with guns. American army was literally an army of farmers.
With guns.
And they come back to France, which is a absolute monarchy. And they come back with all these ideas of things like voting, democracy, personal freedom, liberty, human rights. And
Yeah,
the
France
does not get along with those ideas.
So funny enough, the French really said, "I don't care if America wins. I just need England to lose."
Yes.
Yep. And then they came. And then the entire French army came back with the idea of personal liberty and started a war with themselves.
Also, a little lesser known fact: the Spanish actually helped the American Revolution too by using Texas cattle farms or pastures and helped fed the American Revolution.
They also hired out a lot of privateers to harass the British Navy on the high seas. However, that connection's a little more tenuous because they were privateers.
Yeah.
I really love that part though. Like just a whole cattle herd being brought over to help feed the American Revolution.
Although if you want to talk about people helping the American Revolution, it should also be noted that back in season 1, we covered a little place called Tobago, the Isle of Despair, during which point we do talk briefly about how the French raiding the British Caribbean colonies helped distract British forces away from the American Revolution, so far as the French actually captured Tobago during the Revolutionary War.
So one other question then.
Yeah, because I want to get back on track with this.
France, then, would have been America's first export of freedom.
Yes. They're also America's first ally, and they were the first nation to recognize the United States as a nation. They were the first nation to recognize the Declaration of Independence as a legitimate governing document.
And we pay them back by making fun of them.
I actually believe Morocco has that distinction.
Ooh, does Morocco have... Ooh,
I believe Morocco has that distinction, which is really a weird one.
That's really... Yeah, because... Didn't, the U.S. Marines, our first, foreign war was sending Marines over to North Africa?
Yeah, to fight the Barbary pirates.
Yeah.
The USS Constitution was part of that.
Yeah. An incredibly uncomfortable song that I remember from my years of high school outside Quantico.
Yep, so Morocco was one of the first countries to recognize the United States and open its ports to American ships by decree of Sultan Muhammad III in 1777. So this was mid-Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because the Revolutionary War is a decade-long war. This was a war of attrition.
And France did not recognize the United States until February 6th, 1778.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
Morocco,
Morocco. That's like
the United
it's
States'
like we like
oldest
the
ally.
support. Like I like the support, but at the same time,
Unexpected allies. Everyone hates
Yep.
the British.
I mean that's fair. They just
everyone,
said,
yeah, it's an everyone hates the England thing. So anyway, back to the from the American Revolution to the 4th of July itself.
Ooh.
Uh, we're going to get to talk a little bit about some things that happened on the day, but first of all, celebrations, right? Because it's the birth of a nation; it deserves to be celebrated. But how do you celebrate the 4th of July? Well, the answer is simple. It is a refined, regal, elegant affair full of dignity. For the original celebrations, were modeled after the celebrations of the birthday of the king. So in Britain at the time, you would celebrate the king's birthday. I think they still do that to some degree over there. Maybe not in the same way, but they do that. And that would mean for the American Revolution in America, you would light a bonfire and have a solemn procession full of the ringing of bells and political oratory.
I think that part might have gotten lost in translation because now we like booze, burgers,
Oh.
and booms.
Oh, don't worry, that comes up later. There's a
Oh,
whole
okay.
thing
I mean,
on
you
how we
got the
get from
bonfires.
there's a whole thing for how we get from A to B, and his name is John Adams.
Oh no!
Oh!
Did he
John
Americify?
Adams does some things,
Oh no!
and
Please tell me he just throws the wildest ass
He
parties,
just
and that's where
throws
America
an
gets it.
absolute banger.
He's just
I'm
throwing a rager on the White House lawn. Front lawn.
I'm gonna leave that in suspense.
Oh,
So yeah,
no,
so
he
the
did.
original way of celebrating the 4th of July was for various political hopefuls to or even just your crazy uncle to get in front of a crowd of people and just start ranting about what they wanted the country to be, and they would effectively either sing praises of or hold public Comedy Central roasts of prominent political figures.
Are you fucking telling me Alexander Hamilton got to roast some of these people on a 4th
Yes.
of
So
July
you're
party?
telling me
Yes,
that
yes. So
Hamilton was real?
So the 4th of July party has effectively what that originally was is now basically the White House press conference every year, that press dinner.
Yeah.
Oh my
where
god.
the president gets up and makes witty remarks at CNN and Fox News and all those good people.
Yeah, I saw Joe Biden's one not too long ago.
Yeah. That is basically what the 4th of July celebrations originally were, except it's everyone and their uncle doing it.
I mean, quite literally at that point.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that is exactly how I would picture the founding of America.
Yeah.
We all get together, get drunk, and roast the fuck out of each other.
Yeah. Now, the original 4th of July celebration, the one held in 1776, was different even from these in this regard, as instead of celebrating the birth of the nation, they held a mock funeral for the King of England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They held a funeral for a living man.
USA, USA, USA.
It was meant as a sort of to symbolize the death of tyranny and the authority of the United Kingdom of Great Britain over the United States of America.
Death to the tyrant.
Because these 13 colonies of and ought to be by rights free.
Beautiful.
Yes. And this is where John Adams does something.
God damn it, the bad lad.
John Adams writes a letter. He writes the letter to, I believe, either his wife or his daughter, I don't recall, during which he lays out a vision he had while witnessing these celebrations of the future of America celebrating its birth. And it is a prophetic vision, for he describes it as a day of community and revelry, a day of games and of fireworks, of parades and bonfires. He describes what we do now in a letter
So
after
He's
witnessing
not
a
wrong.
fake funeral for his king.
I mean, honestly, I've been in a few 4th of July parades. They're pretty great. Especially when you get to throw candy and stuff, man. It is great.
And
Being on the floats.
yeah, it's very fun. And the thing is, Philadelphia apparently had a copy of that letter because the very next year, Philadelphia is the only city that celebrates the 4th of July because, major war. And they celebrate it um, with a massive fireworks display that is heralded in by a 13 cannon salute.
Yes.
You know what? That's what we've been missing all these years.
Fire the
is
cannons!
13 cannons firing at the end of each night.
I hope that they actually were firing upon British targets at the same time. So the British are just like, oh my god, are they firing upon us or are they celebrating?
They're like
see
in the
fireworks, they see the bombs.
It's like the middle of the night and the guards are standing there like, what's that? And then suddenly the guy next to him gets obliterated in one of the 13 and like a 13 what's it called? Like a 13 cannon salute.
It's a 13 cannon salute. It ended with a 13 rocket salute, so they fired into the air the second time. I'm guessing they probably learned from the first time that cannonballs do come down.
I mean, so do the rockets, the way the British used them.
Oh no.
Yeah, but no, the rockets are meant to explode in air, so
I thought that was later American rockets.
No,
that's 1981.
No, rocketry has existed long before the American Revolution. In fact, during the Revolution, the national anthem actually makes reference.
Bursting
So that's actually British rocketry there, trying to effectively fire on the American forts.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, it's one of the British. It's one of the main British artillery, and I think at one point they actually had one mounted to cannons, or like on like the forward bow on some ships.
Yeah, it was a primary form of British cannery. Its main purpose was basically an intimidation display. It was designed to put explosions over people's heads. It was designed to illuminate targets for the actual gunners. And it was designed to basically scare you so that you didn't know which missile was the one that would actually come to kill you and which one was just the one to distract you.
As somebody who has...
It often had it at times would have a reverse effect, like during the siege where the national anthem is written, as the defenders and the people watching sort of saw the massive amount of fire being rained down on them, and it didn't kill them. And it strengthened their resolve to hold out. Because they can't kill us. We've survived everything.
So what's interesting is, as somebody who has been near a firework as it's gone off, great, cool, it doesn't kill you. However, it is very disorienting.
Yeah.
So it is tactical in that sense.
Yeah, that is the point of most rockets, was to disorient you and also mark you so that the guy with the actual cannon knows where to aim.
Hey,
you see that right there?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we do the same thing today with flares and smoke. It's like, oh, that's what we're supposed to be shooting at.
I mean, it's very effective.
Yeah.
Also,
it's really cool. It's a really cool fun fact that rockets were used in the American Revolution.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how they celebrated the first one in Philadelphia, which also I think is important to highlight. Philly was the capital of the country at the time.
Yeah.
Did Philadelphia see the war too? Like, was there a lot of fighting around Philadelphia?
No,
Aspects.
There were aspects. However, the main British force was largely contained to the coast, where the British Navy could exert control. Hence, cities like Boston, New York, and Charleston faced the brunt of the assault.
Boston was almost entirely engulfed by the British. New York, they took most of Manhattan, but not the surrounding countryside.
Yeah, and with New York also, the British efforts there were hampered by the fact that New York burns down halfway through the war. And
Washington just sits there and watches like, wow, what a fortuitous event.
Yeah.
So we know about the first celebration, right? Did celebrations continue afterward, or was there like a
So,
little bit of pot? Kind of like how
yeah, so
Thanksgiving, where like
yeah.
the president would announce a Thanksgiving Day, but it's not like an official
Yeah.
holiday.
So the holiday doesn't really be established or celebrated for another 15 to 20 years. Displays are intermittent, in one part because of the war, and another part because the United States is starting to figure out what itself is as a country. It's actually allowed to govern itself because the war does eventually end over that period, and we're kind of figuring out how elections work, what laws are, things like that as a nation. The there's just too much going on. However, George Washington does note down the date of 4th of July as a celebratory date for his men and issues double rations to them in 78 and 81, the 2 years where such supplies were available for him to do so.
No wonder he's such a revered leader.
Yeah.
Someone gave
Uh,
me. Oh no! Is this the origin of the corporate pizza party?
God damn it!
I.
Seeing as how we had a very tough quarter in Valley Forge, yes.
No. Well,
uh,
unfortunately, since we
for
lost the
those
big.
who don't for those who don't know, Valley Forge was a winter camp established for the Continental Army by George Washington that had no food or fuel to keep its men warm and fed during the winter.
Well, due
It
to
didn't.
unforeseen events where half the army died, we now have extra rations.
Yay!
Some of them also didn't have shoes, apparently.
Yeah, that's a recurring thing in revolutions within America.
They didn't have shoes for whatever
Oh
reason.
no! Imagine there's a British
Washington and
business
Lee
that says
just
no,
both start rising up behind us.
no shirt, no shoes, no
Yeah.
service.
But
Oh, damn. They couldn't go
but
into 7-Eleven.
Oh
yeah.
no!
That's why they were hungry all the time.
No slushies.
Yeah. Anyway, 4th of July does begin to get celebrated again in the 1820s and 1830s as the death of two of its signers, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, on July 4th of 1826 adds a degree of significance to the date. It is also, I believe, the death of the last of the people to sign it, the last of the main
Last two.
founding fathers.
And there's also a really ominous quote that John Adams spoke that really resonates.
The man was a prophet. He predicted the whole damn celebration.
So John Adams, his dying words were "Jefferson lives," not knowing that Thomas Jefferson had died like 2 hours prior.
Yeah.
They both died same day, and that was his dying words. Like, and I just also find it very interesting because one, what a fucking patriotic day to go out on. I mean, the 50th anniversary of the signing, you both decide to like tap out, and two, I also find it kind of prophetic because, like you said, they went against each other a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
They both were like, I've seen enough.
They were
We'll
bitter
go.
rivals, but they also held a very common goal, which is something I think is oftentimes lost.
Yeah. Now,
You mean two people of opposite?
Aaron, don't go there.
listen.
Don't go there.
Aaron, be silent. Yeah. Anyway, so
That would cause problems.
listen. So leading up to this point, and sort of with the start off, resumption of celebrations in the 20s and 30s. Once again, the celebrations are very formal. They're very, sort of stylized. The two emerging political parties use them as sort of national convention style platforms where anyone who wants to be anyone for these parties goes to a partisan celebration and gives some speech about America and freedom and what they're going to do for it. Politicians lay out their platforms. They speak on political issues. And there were two other sort of celebrations that occur in the sort of gap leading up to it, as people kind of try and figure out what day we should celebrate prior to both Jefferson and Adams kicking it. The first one is celebrating George Washington's birthday, because there's nothing like treating a man who refused a crown like king.
It also is very emblematic, and I find it kind of neat how people are like, they really do revere George Washington, but he also just didn't want it, and I think that's something that's also kind of lost a lot more frequently now. Is
Yeah.
he stepped down voluntarily after two terms in office, and then there's people who consistently try and run and run and run and
Yeah, but anyway.
I mean, like he's the one who basically turned church like set the tradition for two
Yeah.
terms because I mean it wasn't legalized until after FDR.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roosevelt.
Yeah,
Hey,
anyway.
got us through the war, didn't he?
Anyway.
Which,
Anyway. The other day that tries to take over truly emphasizes just how rapidly America starts off divided. In that the other day that tries to get celebrated as the day of celebration is the date of Thomas Jefferson's inauguration. I'm just going to leave us with that. It did not survive him leaving office, thankfully. As, I believe the whole point of this country is not paying tribute to one man. That's kind of why the war started.
I mean, some things get lost to time.
Apparently was lost in the people who started it.
I mean, listen, it's like what 20 years. I mean, yeah, those people automatically forgot. They got too cozy.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. But as we move into the 1820s and 30s, and the 19th century moves on, we begin to see a lot more people enter the fray. The celebrations are still very political, but people begin to realize it doesn't have to just be political for the political parties.
Yeah, boy, let's get it.
yeah, Rangers.
Yeah, all a number of other groups start performing the same celebration style as the political parties. Big speeches, toasts, roasts, all that stuff. But for their own goals, including the abolitionists, women's rights, and the temperance movement.
Boo!
Not the temperance.
And I just have to wonder how the hell a toast works if you're in the temperance movement.
We hereby toast our glasses of water to temperance.
Yeah.
Fucking losers, man.
Yeah. And here's a fun fact. There was an incredibly, which I find to be an incredibly un-American thing by a group claiming to be the most American. The nativists. Nativists refused to celebrate. Now, the nativists were a political organization of 19th and even early 20th century America that were basically the anti-immigration people of their day. That was their whole platform, was that immigration should not exist, immigrants should not live in this country, etc., etc., etc. They lost the name, but they never died. Anyway, the nativists refused to celebrate the 4th of July Independence Day because, in their words, and this is their own words, allowing immigration is a perversion of the rights of the people of America.
Jeez.
And so long as that perversion exists, they could not celebrate. That was their claim. That was their mentality. Thy grave was not dug hastily enough.
So, okay, they took a very perverse look at it. Now, I could imagine that beyond the normal celebrations, that on Independence Day, they would try to coincide some major events. Like, I know the Statue of Liberty was delivered on the 4th.
Yep. A number of groundbreaking ceremonies are scheduled for Independence Day. The Statue of Liberty was presented to the United States from France on July 4th, 1884.
Thanks, France.
Yay, France!
Additionally, it was very common for infrastructure to coincide with that day, as the groundbreaking ceremonies for the Erie Canal and the Ohio and Baltimore railroads were both scheduled for that day. This is not the day they opened. This is the day that people started construction on them.
The groundbreaking ceremonies.
Yeah,
Which
that's what I was saying, because I need to clarify that, because it gets very confusing because everyone's looking at like the date that they open.
But like the Erie Canal was hugely instrumental with opening up the American interior.
Yeah, and so were these railways. Just the ability of again, public works, public infrastructure is kind of the theme for a lot of these ceremonies, for a lot of these things that are scheduled on the 4th of July. It's still very a public, event.
It makes sense. Knock out two birds with one stone. Fireworks can get expensive.
Yeah, and it's this, and it also led to some interesting quirks of history. With all these different groups sort of coming out and saying we celebrate or don't celebrate Independence Day because of politic thing here. In 1859, there was a group called the Banneker Institute of Philadelphia. They decided that, this whole American Revolution thing, this Independence Day, eve of the Civil War, mind you, Independence Day's looking a little too white. So they went out to the African American community of Philadelphia and told them that they needed to get out there and celebrate Independence Day, because as a means of, and this is their logic, as a means of showcasing the inconsistencies between the ideals of the Constitution and life of America. Yes, praise us, we failed you.
I mean, to be fair, there's a certain level of social commentary there of like, look at the discrepancies, look at this. I can understand it to make a point, but yeah, not the best look.
Yeah, that the same year Harper's Ferry happened?
I don't know.
1859, yeah. John Brown and Harper's Ferry. In Virginia!
Okay, so when did it really transform into the Party Central?
Yeah. So, so things are happening. Well, the big change comes later in the 19th century when Congress, after surviving the Civil War, makes it a national holiday in 1870. It moves from this political holiday to a leisure holiday, and with that, it transforms into the most important secular holiday on the American calendar, so much so that it is actually celebrated in even some of the most remote towns of the American frontier. A number of people who had their testimonies recorded in the early 20th century described growing up on the frontier and how Independence Day was the one day where everyone from all the ranches all would gather in the town and you would meet everybody, because it was the one day everyone was going into town.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. And then from then on up through up into the early 20th century, it became increasingly associated with entertainment venues. It became the major midsummer holiday. Amateur fireworks became a thing. Heavy drinking to celebrate 4th of July also became a thing. These two factors coincided in a social movement called the Safe and Sane 4th of July movement, which strove desperately to reduce the amount of injuries resulting from mixing alcohol and explosives.
I don't see what could possibly go wrong with the combination of those two.
I definitely didn't experience most of those 4th of July moments.
Yes, it appears that common sense did not really exist, especially when you give someone beer and a boomstick.
Listen, the average American has a high school diploma. Take that for what you will. And that's all you really need to operate fireworks out in your backyard.
And for anyone outside of America that thinks every American gets drunk and lights off fireworks, it's not all of us, but it is a starkly high number. Like, I would guesstimate around 60 to 65% have partaken in those activities.
Well,
you also have to remember.
I think it's a
lot
lower
of people
number
also
for
still have to work.
partaking, just because you really only need one guy to detonate this stuff. Everyone else just gets to watch.
But I mean, that's still participating in some degree.
Yeah, you also have to remember that also, like, you're on 4th of July, you're either drinking and partying or you're at work because your company said, no, you don't get the day off.
Yeah, so it's funny you should mention
Freedom's
Day
only
Off.
for those who aren't shackled by
Yeah.
the chains of
Yeah.
retail.
Yeah. It's funny you should mention the day off there, Aaron, because our next big event for the 4th of July and American Independence Day is, of course, right before the United States enters World War II. Because 1941, Congress makes the 4th of July a paid holiday for federal employees, meaning it's not only a national holiday, but it's a day off.
Ooh.
And I
That's-
get paid.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a big one.
And it is at about this
The
time.
invention of the long weekend.
It is at about this time in the transition to the post-war world after World War II that the holiday takes the form we know it as today. Parades, patriotic music, fireworks. The barbecue is introduced as the main form of meal and gathering for the day.
There's the burgers. The burgers,
Yeah, there you
brats.
go. Yeah, it completely at this point has lost its importance as a sort of venue for politics. It does remain a symbol of national power. It emphasizes the American qualities of freedom, and it's about as we know it today. And as it's made this transition, there is one last tweak that happens to Independence Day, and that is the practice of celebrating it always on a weekday. It's the only federal holiday to do that. It's the only holiday to ever really do that. As if the 4th of July is a Saturday, it will be celebrated on Friday the 3rd of July. And if the 4th of July is a Sunday, it shall be celebrated on Monday the 5th of July.
I mean, to be
No
fair,
matter what, you get the day off.
to be fair, that's how all federal holidays do work.
Yep.
At least when you are in a position that gets those days off, is
Yeah.
they usually fall on the weekend, the day before, the day after. But yeah, to set that precedent is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but it's also the celebration is held. On
Yeah,
a different
it's-
day.
It also helps for like other places to schedule when they want to do their 4th of July celebration. So, in some towns they might do it like the day, like on that Friday. If 4th of July is on a Saturday, they might do it on that Friday, and then town over might do it on the 4th. So that way they still get everybody to come in because everybody's gonna get hungry.
Yeah, it's
so
a party.
Yeah, so basically it is for a lot of towns, especially like if you're in the rural part of the country, you're just going from one town to the next town for a party each different day.
And lots of fireworks. Fireworks shows are very, very prominent. I mean, in Washington, D.C. themselves, they host 2 separate fireworks shows, one on the National Mall and one in the water. I was lucky enough to get to experience one of the fireworks shows, and I kid you guys not that the fireworks show itself lasted for almost 3 hours. Like the whole last hour or like 45 minutes of it was just the finale. They probably burned through $15 million worth of fireworks.
One of the best firework displays that I've ever seen was actually in Michigan. So I was up in the Upper Peninsula near Sault Ste. Marie, and Mackinac Island has like an amazing fireworks display. And since I was in the Scouts, we were on a campsite on the lake.
Oh.
So the fireworks were shooting, as you know, like it's late, but like we suddenly saw them shooting out those fireworks. So we all stayed up for like an extra hour just to watch this amazing fireworks. Which, I mean, like if you were on the island, was probably a lot cooler, but it was still great from where we were.
Oh, for sure. Like to see that and to see the fireworks over the water has to be unreal. I mean, our fireworks show is on the water. It's held right off the end of Navy Pier, so that's always a really fun time, and there's a lot of celebrations. I mean, people have barbecues, you'll have parties, you'll have festivals, entertainment. Like it's such a good time, and it's truly the most American thing in the world.
So people always talk about Christmas being that like the time when everybody comes together regardless. No, it's 4th of July,
it's the
because
4th of
we
July.
like to, because it doesn't matter who you are. If you want to get drunk and watch fireworks, everybody.
Friend of
The
a friend.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
the
can't tell you
tenets
how
of-
many times I've met people at fireworks shows.
Basically, the tenets of this holiday are alcohol and explosives.
Yes.
And camaraderie.
Booze, burgers, and booms. That's my 3 Bs of the 4th of July.
Okay, Colin, we gotta know what was your favorite fireworks display. Come on, like me and Justin already got ours, and we need to know your favorite.
I don't know. I don't really remember them too much. It's sort of just like I see them and then I forget.
Oh.
Oh, come on.
I do have one that I can input that I think is a very American thing.
Okay, go for it.
I've seen the one. I've seen the one in the National Mall. I've seen a couple
That's my
held in
favorite.
various.
That's a
park
good one.
terraces, in Virginia, in Illinois, in Texas. I've seen them, sort of all around the country. They're all pretty damn big.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I don't have any interesting stories. I'm not, Aaron over here who clearly is hiding some story where someone blew their hand off.
I have a cousin who lost his eye to a firework, but that's a different story.
I mean,
I was in Tennessee with my dad, and I was a young child, probably like 10 or 11. I was not a teenager, but I was younger. We stopped at a fireworks stand in Tennessee, a stand on a lone country road, just a tent with a bunch of fireworks under it. And my dad bought one. They had just this package. It said M80s, and it was like $20. So he bought it. Turns out it contained like 10,000 M80s. I lit them off.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was absurd. And then he also bought a box. It was one of those firework display shows in a box. You light a single wick, and it's an entire show. It called itself D-Day, and he lit that, and it was an entire show. Like, it went on for over 20 minutes. It was incredible.
I'll tell you. See, I wish one 4th of July. So Americans who have been abroad around the 4th of July, will like probably get this, and I feel sorry for the Brits who had to put up with us. I've told these guys beforehand.
You don't have to tell them the story. You don't have to put it on the internet.
It's a great story. It's a great story. So, because it's nothing bad or anything, but like we were the quintessential Americans abroad when it came to the 4th of July, because in 2021 I was getting ready to go on a dig in the UK with a bunch of other Americans, and we had to do quarantine. And what ended up happening was 4th of July was the day we happened to like leave quarantine. So what we did was, Manchester has a canal running through it. So what we decided to do was do our own little version of the dubbing of the tea in the harbor by taking British tea that we made and throwing it in the canal. And then when we got on the bus,
As if Manchester's canal isn't already polluted enough, Aaron.
There's like a few bodies in there for the Manchester pusher, but
Listen.
But like we got on
It's a
bus.
British waterway. There's no ecology for him to destroy.
Literally.
Story.
So we get on the bus, and it's us, the Americans, decided we're all like, we're gonna go in the back seat because we are the party of this trip, because it's the 4th of July. So we all get in the back of the bus, except for like maybe a handful, and we all decided to be like, all right, so when we pick up the British kids at the University of Manchester, we're gonna start singing American songs. And we're all like, all right, what we got here? We got Party in the USA, we got Born in the US. We had a few other ones I can't quite remember. But like we sang like 5 different songs before we quieted down and actually started talking to the British students. That is like, when Americans are abroad during the 4th of July, you'll know.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
if every country that ever gained independence from England were to sing a single song to England, England would be there for a year.
Oh no.
But,
yeah, what is it, like 160 some out of the 170 nations in the United Nations?
That's the number of nations the English have been at war with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They did not. They did. That's the number they've invaded, not the number that they've actually like held dominion over.
It's still, it's a large number. It's over 100 that they've held dominion over.
Well, I know everyone hate us.
Oh, don't
Yeah.
get it.
But anyway, I'm gonna stop the I'm gonna stop the
I
semi-offensive
I do
accents.
love the UK. I did love being there. It was a great time. I met great people. But I will never
Yeah.
get tired of being like,
All right.
it's Tuesday, isn't it?
Listen. I've been to London too. I've been to the
Good old
UK.
London town.
My favorite part was how in the middle of London they have a statue of Boudica, a woman who burned that city to the ground.
Yeah, that's weird.
But yeah, I think we're coming up to the sort of end of our time here, and I'm just gonna leave it off with a little question from my other two co-hosts, since we're doing Fourth of July stories here at the end. Did either of you ever get those little smoke grenades for the Fourth of July? They're little balls, had little wicks out. When you light them,
Oh,
the colored smoke comes out.
Yes,
yeah.
I've had those. I've had the little ones that are cardboard tanks that you light the
Yep.
wick on, and then they like roll and shoot the smoke out.
Oh,
Did you guys get like the
I
ones
just had the
that looked like they were
hand
supposed to fly?
Yeah, I've had ones that flew as well. Yeah, there's a lot of smoke bombs you can get.
Yeah, that's the most thing I remember. It's just
Do you guys
just
remember the
having
snakes,
a
the ones that would always like stain the concrete?
So, Aaron, that's what we did with all the M80s, that box full, because there were just more than I could light. So what me and my cousin did was we took about 1,000 of them and we tied all the wicks together and we made a large snake, and it went the length of my grandparents' property, which was over an acre, and we lit it and it went all the way down.
So this is Justin's origin story. There we go.
On that tragic bombshell, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed,
Oh my god, is this why you're obsessed with that
be
phrase?
sure to leave a like down below. Be sure to subscribe, and if you enjoyed, please share with people. Let them know how you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.